My name is Nancy Willard, and I've been running a program that's had a variety of different names. My focus, um, okay, actually, we'll go to, oh, darn, I can't move my screen until I can get rid of this chat box. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I'm sorry for the weird hair. I had chemo last summer. My background is that I'm a former special education teacher, worked with kids who have emotional challenges. I'm also a former attorney. And when I was an attorney, I got involved in technology law. That led me back into schools as an education technology consultant, and that led me to a focus on youth risk, especially online, which led me into a broader focus on youth risk, especially focusing on bullying. In the late 2000s, early 2010s, I had 3 books published. The first book on cyberbullying was the first book ever published on cyberbullying in the world. And I have self-published another book a couple of years ago, Engage Students to Embrace Civility, and I'm really excited. I've got actually 3 books, but I don't have the cover for the other one. But my book, Rise Above Bullying, Empower and Advocate for Your Child, will be published this fall by Wiley, and I'm going to self-publish 2 books, actually, Positively Powerful, Be a Teen Thriver, and Be a Tween Thriver. So, as I've been doing this work in what they call bullying, I hate that term, we are now seeing expanded efforts in increasing inclusion. Now, my term was embrace civility. I can supplement increase inclusion. We're talking about the same thing. So as I'm kind of expanding my focus into the DEI area, and translating what I've been doing all along into that area, we need to realize that we've got 3 issues. If we want to create community in schools, we've got to be dealing with acts of explicit prejudice, intentional hurtful acts of implicit bias, which are acts that aren't intentionally being hurtful, but do have a hurtful impact. And especially, we have to deal with the systemic inequities. And that's where I'm going to be really focusing. We've got to look at the data of what's going on and figure out how to remedy this. Okay, so what you measure is what you can correct. If you're not measuring and not looking and not trying to figure out how to correct, then you've got some kids who are not connected. And I'll show you the data on that. What are your students' experiences being treated badly by peers or staff? Too many schools aren't looking at that. What are their perspectives on the degree that they feel safe, welcome, included at school? What is the differences in how your students are being treated that advantage some and disadvantage others? And what negative outcomes appear to be associated with concerns related to explicit prejudice, implicit bias, and systemic inequities? So I'm going to start with my father. This is my father. Years ago, around when I was born, and I'm old, he invented the process, or co-invented the process, to make potato flax. That's Idaho potatoes. Yes, we moved to Idaho. And he always taught me he's an inventor. Okay. So to make positive change, you have to look at what's happening. And the potato granules that they were using were absolutely horrible. Then you have to look at the research to find out what approaches hold better promise. And then you have to implement that approach and figure out whether you have a positive outcome. So in 2007, I wrote my book on, written 2006. And I realized that the approach that school leaders were being directed to use, which is make rules, supervise, tell students to report, investigate, and impose consequences, that wasn't going to work because schools aren't making rules for the digital community. Staff aren't present. Even more than in-school bullying, students aren't reporting because they know you're going to overreact and make things worse. Principals have pretty significant challenges with some of the digital investigations. And if you do impose consequences, you've got the potential of digital retaliation that's uncontrollable. So let's look at some more data. There were some big efforts early in the Obama administration to better address bullying, and the CDC started measuring bullying in 2009. There hasn't been any improvement since that time. Let's look at some more data. We need to focus on what is the quality of the relationships at school. That's both between students and between staff and students. And we cannot underestimate the importance or undervalue the importance of healthy relationships between teachers and students. Every student needs to feel that the teachers at that school and the other adults really care about them. So what's the data tell us? Well, I'm from Oregon. Sorry if any of you for Oregon, because I give some Oregon data. This is Oregon's version of the YRBS. And there's a question on there. Ask students to agree, disagree. So it's a 4-point scale, and I consider the 2 bottom points to be disagree or really disagree. They have slightly different terms. So this is 2006. We've got roughly around 20% of students in school who don't think anybody cares about them. Important, needs to be addressed, right? Okay, 2022. Well, we added 6th graders and they seem to think that people care about them a little more, but there really has been no improvement on this vitally important measurement in 16 years. What's going on? Another issue related to data. In 2010, U.S. Department of Education advised states to require that schools make annual reporting incidents of bullying. And in every state that has done that, we see profound decreases. Now, the data I have on that comes from New York. New York included this provision in their much glorified Dignity Act. And then the comptroller for the state evaluated what's going on with these reports, and they discovered that 71% of New York City schools had 0 incidents of bullying. Now, if you believe that, there's a bridge I could sell you, but kind of has traffic backup. And if you look at the YRBS in New York, the rate of bullying was increasing. So why didn't anybody pay attention to this data that clearly indicates that the approach that was incorporated into the statute is having a really bad effect? So this is my 2023 conclusions. I am working on a online on-demand course because my book's too big. You're not going to want to read it. Okay, so the current approach that schools are using isn't working. And there are a whole bunch of reasons why that I'm not going to go into in this presentation. And it's really not the fault of school leaders. It's what you've been told you're supposed to do in accord with the state statutes, which is not in accord with the federal civil rights law. Anyway, It's a total mess. Nothing is working effectively to improve these relationships. Now, I've been getting new into DEI. Okay, so let's look. I'm sorry, I'm a research Grinch. Let's look at what's going on in DEI trainings. And because we've got a lot of contention about DEI in K-12 education, so what's happening? Okay, so the research in this area is profoundly concerning. Hundreds of studies that say the anti-bias training doesn't work. Implementation of this kind of training, pace, available evidence that they're effective. Calling kids, speaking about white privilege isn't productive, isn't helpful. Strategies that say, not just on these anti-prejudice standards are increasing challenges. The guy who developed the implicit association test basically says, hey, we've got a whole bunch of people out there going into companies doing anti-DEI trainings without any effectiveness. And then there's a whole huge other area related to microaggressions and real concerns about the research based on that. How, okay, if these approaches aren't working in business, what's happening in K-12? Are we looking at it? Are we using the same approaches? What's happening? I can't find any research to let me know on that. So I'm going to go through just a little bit of bullying because I just can't seem to do any presentation without talking about bullying. So what is bullying? Well, that's the first problem. There's too many definitions. We've got a statutory definition. We've got an academic definition. Then we've got the definition for hostile environment under federal civil rights laws, the questions that students are being asked, and what people think. Okay, so I recently saw a document came from the California School Board Association. And within that document, they talked about the statutory definition of bullying and the academic definition of bullying. They mentioned a survey that had a different definition of bullying, and they mentioned protected class students. I'm kind of not sure whether they included the hostile environment definition, but so we need to focus on increasing inclusion or embracing civility, and we need to make sure all students can maintain positive relationships, respond effectively when hurtful incidents that could meet a variety of definitions occur, and that adults intervene effectively. So who are bullied? Well, this comes from stopbullying.gov. I got a lot of concern about the information that's on that website. And as you can see, it talks about the children who are at risk of bullying, and they're different, weak, depressed, anxious, less popular, etc. Note that this did not include the fact that a lot of these kids are from marginalized identity groups, and they're being treated badly based on who they are. And that is a profound harm if you're being treated badly because of who you are. Who bullies? Again, stopbullying.gov. And this is one of the things that I saw way back in 2006 when I was working on my book, the description of who bullies. I'm going, no, that's not who's bullying. That's not who's cyberbullying. It's also not who bullied me way back in the 60s. So we do have one group of at-risk youth who are aggressive, and they are also being treated badly. There's huge concerns that they've experienced trauma and they are being aggressive, and they are at high risk. They are, sometimes they're called bully victims. That's reverse. They are victimized, and now they're engaging in aggression. And they're not the greatest source of bullying behavior. Now, this was finally actually addressed in a publication from the National Academy of Sciences, where they talk about the fact that there's a stereotype, which came from the NIH, that those who bully have very low social skills, have real challenges. But the research demonstrates that those who bully are popular, they are socially skilled, they are high status, they are perceived as leaders. Okay? These are the students who are being hurtful to achieve social dominance. And if we're doing a shift over to and we're integrating DEI insight, this is a process that those who are in power use to oppress those who they deem to be unworthy, and also to oppress rivals. So bullying behavior is oppression behavior. So it's in my opinion imperative to look at the data. How many students are being persistently treated in a really hurtful way by other students or by staff? How effective are they in responding? Because we have to increase their effectiveness in responding. If they're hurtful, can they stop themselves and apologize? Do witnesses step in to help? Tell someone to stop, report concerns. That's one of the most important things we need to increase. Are staff intervening when they see hurtful incidents? And are they effective? Are students reporting? If things are really bad, if they can't resolve it on their own, are they reporting? If they tell an adult at school, does this make things better? And if they don't report, why don't they? So we're going to go through the data. Okay. Numerous universal findings of studies are that students don't perceive the actions of staff to be supportive in preventing or responding to bullying. And the failure, there's one study in a middle school that says, kids are being bullied in the classroom, on the recess, in the lunchrooms, and staff are present. They don't intervene, and that increases the distress of the students. Overwhelmingly, students say the teachers don't respond effectively, aren't prepared to intervene if they're asked, and will generally make matters worse. Want to see the data? Here it is. Okay, this was a study. 87% of staff think they have effective strategies. High school and middle school students disagreed. How many staff? Oh, I can't see my data here, so I'm not going to read off inaccurate numbers, but look, staff make things worse when they intervene. Staff are never going to admit that they make things worse when they intervene. And staff say they're going to intervene. Oh. So we have to look at the data from both perspectives. Now, in 2015, I did a study. It's a national study. The full report's on my site. My URL's at the end of my email address, and you're probably not going to be able to find it. So just write to me, you can find it. But I'm going to report some of the data from that. So I looked at students. I asked them how frequently they were being bullied, how upset they were, and how effective they felt in responding. And if they were treated badly once or twice a week or almost daily, if they were upset or really emotionally distressed, and if they had significant difficulties, I considered them to be more vulnerable. Okay, that's the phrase I use. So what they reported was that staff were present 65% of the time, and afterwards things got better only 13% of the time. 47% of the time stayed the same, and 40 things got worse. So in bullying prevention, you all know this, tell an adult. If you're bullied, tell an adult. We'll fix it for you. Well, students are also told not to tattle, and reporting can lead to retaliation, clearly, both retaliation and loss of reputation. And there's also a developmental factor going on here. I believe teens feel that they need to resolve their situations on their own. So we need to help them gain the skills to resolve the situations on their own, which means we need data. How effectively do they feel in resolving these situations on their own? So, unfortunately, I'm going to pick on my local school district. This was Eugene 4J, and they were doing surveys of bullying. And they asked two questions, bullying and then harassment. Harassment is close to protected class, but they added physical appearance, and that's not exactly a federal civil rights challenge, but we'll consider that harassment. So this is the data they put out, and I asked them to look at this data and squish it. So I want to know all together. So we've got 8 point something, can't see that either, of students who are either being bullied or harassed once a week or more. Now look at the data that was shown to the school board on whether or not students will ask for help. Okay, first of all, look at how far up that chart goes, 60%, but the way they showed the chart makes it look, hey, the vast majority of students say they ask for help. And note that this is all students. We have to disaggregate the data. So I asked their data person to do this for me. Fortunately, before the superintendent secretary decided that I should charge for this analysis. And clearly, the students who think they would tell an adult and ask for help are the ones who weren't being bullied. The students who are being bullied once a week or more, 63% of them wouldn't talk to a staff person, and 68% of the students who are being harassed wouldn't talk to a staff person. There's another study. Youth Voice Project, Nixon and Davis, and they discovered that students who were, in their data, bullied and feeling distressed, only about a third asked for help. And after they asked for help, things got better only a third of the time. Funny thing, in my data, on the more vulnerable students, only about a third said that they asked for help, and things got better only 30% of the time. Why didn't they ask for help? They didn't think school would do anything, thought school would make things worse, thought they would be blamed, thought they deserved to be treated badly, and that the student being hurtful would have retaliated. Okay, so schools are told, tell students to tell an adult, and that's going to address bullying. That approach is effective about 10% of the time. Who's looking at that data? Hurtful staff. Hurtful staff is a huge concern that most people are ignoring. And this is a chronic abuse of power. Chronic. And usually no consequences. Do you have any surveys that ask students how well they're being treated by staff? Okay, so on my survey, I tossed in a question. I didn't even really think that much about it. I asked students how frequently they witnessed a school staff member being hurtful. And then the data, those who said they had never witnessed a staff member be hurtful as compared to those who had ever witnessed a staff member being hurtful. And then I compared those results with the answers on whether they had witnessed students being hurtful, been hurtful, or someone had been hurtful to them. This data was astounding. How frequently had they witnessed another student being hurtful? Just look at the blue area. If staff had been hurtful, or if staff had never been hurtful. How frequently were they hurtful? If they had ever seen staff be hurtful? If they had never seen staff be hurtful? And how frequently was someone hurtful to them? Okay, so excuse me. From my data, it shows me if schools will seriously address the concerns of staff being hurtful to their students, we could see profound increases in inclusion and acceptance and decreases in bullying. So I also included a bunch of positive social norms questions on my survey, and these are the ones. This is the theory that I think is so people misperceive what the thoughts of their peers are. They either overestimate or underestimate what their peers think about certain things, what their values are. But the more they learn about the positive norms of their peers, the more they're likely to act in accord with those norms. And this theory was actually used in a really great study where all they did was a positive norms survey. Then they created posters with the local data, and the impact was a significant reduction of bullying. That's a pretty simple intervention to implement. So these are some of the survey questions I included. What's your normal reaction if you see students being disrespectful? Okay, so this kind of a poster could be put up in schools, and kids could be told, hey, when you're hurtful to somebody, this is how many people in our school really don't like to see you doing that. That can change behavior. Also ask them questions about who do they admire, have mixed feelings about, and not admire. And now, okay, yeah, we're going to have some bias here. They know how to, they're going to respond pretty quickly. But look at the responses on retaliation and ignoring. Yeah, retaliation is well supported by many in our society. So that's an issue that we really need to focus on. And ignoring, yeah, maybe, well, that's what they're always told, just ignore. But can we increase their willingness to help if we show them how valuable that might be? I asked them to provide words. What words do they think describes somebody who steps in to help another? Because positive peer intervention is vitally important. And I asked more fine-tuned questions. I'm not going to expect you to read through these, but I asked the students if they had witnessed somebody being hurtful, whether or not they had stepped in to help. And I asked the students who had been treated badly whether anybody had stepped in and helped. And a lot of student witnesses said that they stepped in to help somebody, but a lot fewer students who were treated badly said that anybody stepped in to help them. So my thoughts are that this data needs to be collected in the school and then needs to be shared with students. And then we say, okay, how can look at what you think about those who step in and help? How can we increase that? So to address bullying or explicit prejudice, we have to empower young people. They need their skills. They need to be able to independently maintain positive relationships and respond effectively when hurtful incidents occur. We need to ensure that staff are responding effectively in an instructional manner. And if there are really serious or pervasive hurtful situations, a whole team needs to intervene effectively, not with a 10% level of improvement. So what data do we need? We need to know if they're being treated badly. What's the harmfulness of the impact? How effective do they feel? Are staff present? Are they effectively resolving? Do they report the more serious situation? We don't want them to report everything. We want them to resolve. So are witnesses helping? Are they effective? Do hurtful students stop and apologize? Those are the skills we want them to increase. So if we want to increase those skills, we need to measure those skills, and then we need to enlist their involvement in increasing the skills. Hurtful students, we need to understand, has somebody been hurtful to them? Good half of the students who said they had been hurtful also said somebody had been hurtful to them. Is this reactive or proactive? What's their motivations? Did a staff member step in? Did any student witness step in? Did they stop? Did they apologize? Again, we're looking at, do they have the skills to effectively manage positive relationships? Student witnesses, how frequently do they witness people being hurtful? How frequently do they witness staff being hurtful? And how frequently do they step in to help, tell somebody to stop, and report concerns? Because that positive peer intervention, if we can increase positive peer intervention, now I don't have the data on that, but you can get the data on that. If we can increase positive peer intervention, we'll see a dramatic reduction in bullying. Okay, systemic inequities. This is huge. Not sure, and I'm going to get to how we might be able to do it, but let's look at how are we looking at these systemic inequities. And the very first one, okay, yes, we're going to address, we're going to make sure all kids are able to succeed. Every student is going to succeed. And to do this, we're going to require that schools report all this extensive data, and we're going to require high-stakes testing. Are we going to address the fact that schools have really inequitable levels of funding because on property taxes? How can we address equity? How can we increase equities in schools without addressing the inequitable funding? Okay. So what we have to recognize is that everybody has implicit bias. These are our unconscious urges, and quite frankly, they got, as you're driving down the road, the light turns yellow, your foot's going to go off the gas and onto the brake, and you didn't have to think. That's an unconscious guided action. Unfortunately, there's significant data, research that shows that many school staff have implicit biases that are not supportive of students who are in marginalized identity groups. And research study upon research study, who are staff looking at and thinking are going to misbehave. If you give 2 different papers for staff to evaluate, and one paper has a name that's associated with a Black student, and another has a name that's associated with a white student, white student's paper is going to get rated higher. These implicit biases. And we've got well-documented concerns of discriminatory impact in advanced placement, special education, discipline, absences, dropouts, achievement. I think we also have to take a real close, hard look. Now, there's another document on my site that links all of the other research that it raises concerns about PBIS token rewards. But this is the graphic isn't from my son's school, but his middle school had this incredible pride program, and once a term, all the pride students would get to go on these incredible field trips. And if you go to the school when the kids are off to the coast, to the mountains, and look at the kids who are behind, you realize that those are the students who are of lower income, students of color, and students with disabilities. Now, my kids have been in the PBIS. PBIS was created at the University of Oregon, so it's throughout schools. So I've had many opportunities, and I firmly believe that the token reward approach, where teachers are handing out these little rewards, are influenced by implicit bias. Okay, maybe you disagree. Are you looking at the data? Do you have data? So, having been around the block for probably way too long, I think to achieve improvement, we have to focus on what the data is saying about the quality of relationships, and then engage in concerted research-based strategies to address those relationship issues, and then assess the effectiveness with subsequent data. Now, if you are seeing the lessons I learned from my father here, that's exactly what I learned from my father. We have to look at what's happening, come up with some more different strategies, and then evaluate the effectiveness. How can we do that? Okay, so I took out my slide that basically said there aren't any evidence-based strategies in bullying prevention. And we also got problems in evidence-based strategies for DEI. So how can we proceed? Fortunately, the one really good thing that happened in ESSA is their tier 4 evidence-based. And that is that the support for practices that have a well-defined novel logic theory research and ongoing evaluation to determine effectiveness. Absolutely stellar. And nice gentleman at Brookings Institute absolutely agreed that this approach to evidence-based, absolutely, if we focus on efforts to examine the effectiveness and change schools to an evidence-based system. That's what we've got to do. So what you measure is what you get. Only works if the school is really effectively measuring and using that evidence, and then evaluating the effectiveness of, so what we've got to do is analyze disaggregated, no, all of our students, or a good portion of our students think it's great to report. No, guess what? 2/3 of your kids who are really seriously being bullied aren't reporting. Okay, so you got to disaggregate the data. And then I think in most of these situations, gaining further insight through student focus groups, then we set measurable data objectives, then implement strategies that are research-based, and then assess effectiveness based on subsequent data. So I'm actually working on a new school climate inclusion survey. And I think that like we've got the student health survey here in Oregon, and has some relationship questions, could be used for data, but I think more questions need to be added. I want to see the questions on positive norms and effective skills. I want to see those questions on surveys. But I also want to see, so if we do surveys, we can get identity data. And we need to be looking at identity data, which students are having it, which groups of students, which marginalized identity groups are having greater challenges. And this could be Caucasian students, white students, low income. This isn't just the protected classes. And what are students' perspectives on relationships at the school? And then what are their reports on outcomes? How is their mental well-being, suicide, absences, grades? We can get that data pretty easily. And then what we've got to do is disaggregate it. What percentage of students within this identity group think a teacher or school staff member really cares about them? It's the measurement of relationships. So we got identity and relationships. And of those students who really don't think a teacher really cares about them, what percentage of them are having other negative outcomes? So that's the disaggregation that I think we need to be doing. Then to implement a continuous improvement approach, the school needs to have a diverse school climate inclusion team. And that means staff who are reporting back to the staff, and that's both classified and certified, parents who are reporting back to a parent group, and students who are reporting back to a student leadership group. Then there needs to be an analysis of the school performance data. That's the data, discipline rates, identity analysis of students in special ed, advanced placement, discipline, absences, those kinds of things, and conduct school climate surveys and disaggregate the results of that. Then what I think is really helpful is the student groups have a representative, very diverse representative student group look at the data from the school and have them explain more about that data. And so you have the students involved with this, they're all working together to analyze this. And then you have them select the students who are going to be their voices and go to that team and say, this is what we think. And the adults need to listen. So then the team creates measurable objectives. And I also would encourage students to create measurable objectives. Hey, students, 20% of your peers report that they're being bullied. What do you want that rate to be? And only 38% of the students who were really seriously bullied said that anybody stepped in to help them. What would you like that rate to be? So if we have the students create their measurable objectives for their relationships with each other. Okay, then need to identify research-supported strategies to achieve these objectives, and also identify any barriers to implementing those strategies. Provide this draft report with the data and the objectives to the community. So the fact that only 20% of the students in the school don't think a teacher or staff member really cares about them is information that is now in the community's hands. And the fact that the school is going to reduce that by, let's say we'll reduce it by 50%. We're going to increase the number of students who agree that staff care about them and only 10% next time. And then implement the strategies. There may be needs for professional development, need to support the student leaders in supporting students in gaining greater skills, and provide insight to parents on ways that they can help support their kids. And lastly, assess the effectiveness on a subsequent survey. Create a new plan, and that is then shared with the community. So, having been around a block, trying to create positive change and not achieving much success, my perspective is that this continuous improvement approach, where you are gathering the data, disaggregating it to learn from it, implementing, developing objectives, implementing strategies with everybody in the school community, especially school leaders and school staff, knowing that the next survey data is going to be shared with the public, has the greatest potential to create positive change in the school. Now, this is who I am. If you look for Embrace Civility, you can find me, and I'm pretty sure my email's on the website. I'd love to share with you. And I am going to try to stop sharing so I can take questions.